When a man dove into the water to rescue a drowning baby elephant, the rest of the elephant group did something unexpected. It was the conclusion of a rescue nobody expected to succeed. The wheels screeched loudly and skidded from side to side on the dirt path. Ethan, seated in his jeep, stared forward and witnessed something frightening. 3 enormous elephants blocked the road and refused to budge. Each weighed more than 7 tons, nearly 3 times as heavy as the vehicle heading toward them. If the vehicle struck one, Ethan would likely be seriously injured or killed. The vehicle used to gleam white, but now dirt covered it completely. The elephant at the front was equally dirty from top to bottom. Its legs were coated in dark dirt, darker than its gray hide, as if wearing stockings. The dirt clung to its coarse skin and settled into the creases on its frame. These elephants had been buried in dirt for quite some time now, but they weren't the ones Ethan worried about. Ethan pushed his foot down hard on the pedal, gunning the engine of his vehicle and trying to frighten the elephants away. 2 of them backed up, but Ethan had to brake before crashing into them. He spun into a complete turnaround, the rough wheels spraying dirt through the air, coating the elephants even more heavily. This wasn't what he imagined doing when he volunteered here more than 10 years ago, but after becoming a permanent employee, he'd discovered that he had to prepare for anything. His gut feeling and love for bold solutions had brought him to upper management, but he liked working directly and handling tasks personally. Right now, he needed to channel the abilities of a professional race driver. From 200 feet back, Ethan clutched the steering wheel beneath his weathered cowboy hat, gunning the old engine that shook in resistance. But when it engaged again, the sound boomed and bounced through the park. It grabbed the notice of the elephant group, which had gathered completely around the bank of a river. For the last 30 minutes, they had been struggling to rescue a young member of their group that had tumbled into the water. The gentle, slick ground wasn't firm enough to grab onto for escape or to hold. The baby elephant was floating around, but the circumstances were rapidly turning deadly. They were all covered in dirt now, but their efforts had been fruitless so far. Using their trunks around its frame, none of the other elephants could get a solid grip on the baby. Even worse, while attempting to rescue the small elephant, its relatives had accidentally pushed it further into the water. Its actions were getting slower as it lost strength, and it drifted nearer to drowning. The 4-month-old tilted its head up, struggling for breath. If it didn't escape the water quickly, it would die. The elephant, called Thabo, was the youngest addition to the ATO Elephant National Park, a well-known wildlife reserve in Botswana. At this reserve, elephants were kept safe from poachers, but Ethan, who assisted in running the park, constantly dealt with challenges. He was attempting to help more elephants live, while the region was experiencing water scarcity. As the elephant population continued expanding, the demand for resources was greater than ever before. This explained why the group had assembled along this riverbank, one of the only ones on this section of the park. Now, there was an even more urgent emergency, with Thabo's life in danger. As park staff observed the seemingly hopeless scenario, they were preparing themselves for the first fatality in over 30 years. None of the staff could get to the baby elephant while the group was attempting to help. The clock was working against them. That's when Ethan's bold solution emerged. He would attempt to drive them away from the baby with his vehicle. Separating them from the family would be a difficult challenge, and one he had never pictured himself attempting as a young veterinarian. But with his whole crew observing and hoping, Ethan felt even more motivated to guide them to success and took one final deep breath. The engine beneath him shook as he released the parking brake and let loose its strength. After a quick tire spin, the vehicle was once more shooting toward the group. This time he yanked the steering back and forth, sliding the vehicle sideways, throwing up clouds of dust behind, and making the thing look as large as he could. This caught the notice of the older members of the group, who paused their rescue work to get out of the way. It was succeeding. The crowd was gradually moving back, and Ethan managed to position the vehicle in between to separate the baby elephant. He reversed a bit further from the river. He repeated it twice to be certain, but that was just the first part. Now he had to begin the rescue. He radioed his crew for assistance, leaped out of the vehicle as it halted, and rushed straight into the water. Another park worker named Rashid came with him. It was his first week working there, and his eyes showed pure fear. Rashid, a talented engineering college graduate from a Zimbabwe village, had come to the park for experience, divided between obligation and desire. Now, Ethan was evaluating Rashid as a potentially valuable future team member. He had noticed Rashid's drive and smarts, but also sensed a deep internal struggle, so held back from pressuring him too strongly. Understanding the critical nature of the moment, Rashid went into the water with Ethan without waiting. It would be simpler to push the elephant rather than drag it. Though only a baby, the elephant probably weighed more than 200 pounds. A lifting device was traveling from another section of the park, but it was difficult ground and wouldn't get there for at least 30 more minutes. They couldn't wait that long. Ethan, working with Rashid, counted to 3 with each shove, propping the elephant on their raised knees to rest between pushes. Now there was another threat. The vehicle distraction had only lasted so long. Glancing up across the field, Ethan could spot the larger elephants wandering back over toward them, eager to rejoin with their missing member. He commanded 2 of the workers to get onto the back of the vehicle and maintain the barrier. They carried both a sedative weapon and a firearm, both of which they would aim when the elephants came nearer. As a final option, Ethan shouted at them to wait. He had faith in the elephants, and he also believed they could complete the rescue fast. But instead, the workers activated a loud alarm from a speaker on top of the vehicle. The unfamiliar sound puzzled the elephants briefly, buying them slightly more time, but it wasn't sufficient. The group began advancing toward them again, even quicker, directing their massive frames and swaying trunks directly at the vehicle that was blocking their route to Thabo. The workers gripped tighter and rapidly glanced sideways to check how Ethan and Rashid were progressing. They began to feel it was impossible. Placing their sights in front of their faces, the workers positioned their index fingers on the firing mechanisms, ready to shoot. Meanwhile, the small elephant fought to get out of the water. After many unsuccessful tries, it eventually found its balance and was dragged to safety. For the baby, it felt like forever. When the workers arrived, it had just started sinking. Glancing at the herd, Ethan figured he had just enough time to check the baby. It lay on the grass, catching its breath. He examined its eyes, mouth, and pulse. With Rashid, he noticed long white streaks on the baby's tongue. Dehydration. That might explain how it fell in. Ethan saw the bigger picture too. The herd was struggling to find water. The park had a water shortage and recent heat waves had made things worse, but that was a problem for later. For now, they ran back to the protection of the vehicle just in time to witness an emotional meeting where the baby's mother held the little one close. It cried out, obviously emotional about the whole experience, and immediately inspected Thabo for wounds, just as Ethan had. It gave the sign of acceptance before washing it clean with water from its trunk. It even appeared to give a gentle tap on the head as a warning not to wander from the group again before pulling it close beneath its frame. As the group moved far from the water together once more, this was an annoyed but grateful mother, a feeling everyone understands. Overall, it was a good day. Going back to the main office, most crew members felt proud of what they had accomplished, but Ethan and Rashid didn't want to celebrate. They were deeply concerned about how sick the elephants appeared. They could transport water to the elephants, but that would only be a temporary fix. They needed to discover a larger and more lasting answer, and quickly. The following day, Rashid traveled with Ethan, recording everything they saw. Now, the young engineer was completely focused on the challenge and was working hard to figure out a solution. He observed that all of the elephants appeared to gather in one limited section of the park. They were creating too much pressure on the water, and because of this, the plants were dying. That meant the elephants were also having difficulty finding food, because the region wasn't producing as much. They had gotten too settled and were consuming their environment too heavily. Ethan's years of knowledge told him that it was going to be hard to guide these animals elsewhere. That's why it required a fast-moving vehicle to push them away from their baby. If this was their preferred location for feeding, then it would require a lot to relocate them. Anxiously, Rashid suggested a plan, understanding that it might seem somewhat radical. Ethan promised him that nothing was off the table. Actually, typically Ethan was famous for his unusual plans, so he was receptive to it. Rashid suggested that they install some barriers which would carry mild electric current as a method of moving the elephants to a separate area of the park. Ethan hadn't considered it previously, but it felt like a major move. He disliked the thought of shocking the animals, but Rashid explained the electricity was very mild, just sufficient to direct the group elsewhere so the land could heal. And after witnessing how frail the baby elephant was several days earlier, Ethan understood this might be their sole option. Rashid, who had engineering training, created the barrier plan and provided directions to the crew, naturally taking charge. But he also assisted in building the barrier personally, laboring in the dirt and demonstrating to the others how to complete it. Ethan observed with respect, and so did the elephants, who were interested in the new structure, unaware of what lay ahead for them. When completed, they waited nervously to discover if Rashid's plan succeeded. The elephants were caught off guard by the shocks. After the first two elephants had been shocked, the mothers prevented their babies from charging into it again. The message rapidly traveled, and they all understood the need to change, gradually starting to move to a separate water source at last, letting the habitat recover. It provided more room and resources to other creatures who lived in the park with the elephants, which was going to be a massive benefit for all residents of the park. And as an added advantage, a wildlife expert informed them that adding a minor stress factor into the habitat could be beneficial for elephant reproduction. If elephants became too comfortable in their surroundings, then it was harmful to their numbers. Witnessing the results, the remaining park leadership noticed Rashid and requested him to set up comparable barriers in various sections of the park, as well as to present them with fresh concepts. They wanted to hire him permanently, giving him a position directly under Ethan, but Rashid needed to consider it. This was an important choice. It all appeared to be working well. Before long, though, things risked backfiring on them. On a standard patrol, Ethan and Rashid were talking about the previous month and all the projects they had completed together. Ethan was attempting to persuade Rashid to take the position. If not, his temporary contract would end soon. Rashid wasn't fully persuaded. Sure, he liked the work, but he couldn't stop wondering if there was something different out there for him. That's when they encountered the group again. This time, they appeared suddenly, cutting off the road immediately and forcing the vehicle to halt. They weren't certain if the elephants would be aggressive or not. With their incredible strength, the vehicle could easily be overturned or destroyed if they decided to. Park workers and animal caretakers around the world had been killed by elephants previously, and the reasons were not always understood. There was no question the elephants knew who had constructed the electric barriers. Many of them had observed Rashid laboring out in the area. Now they looked down at his small figure, which was partially shielded by a glass window, but still largely vulnerable. Also, many of the elephants recalled when Ethan had blocked their route with the vehicle, separating them from their baby. Now, for the second occasion, the vehicle and the elephants faced each other. This was distinct, though. The group moved together, shoulder to shoulder, toward them. Ethan turned the ignition, but the vehicle only sputtered and died, refusing to turn on. Rashid was getting more and more anxious. Only a year past his college graduation, he had never witnessed anything like this, nor did he wish to. The elephants were so near now that they blocked the sunlight, throwing a long darkness over the vehicle. Ethan, too, was tense. He twisted the ignition and pressed the gas pedal, but the vehicle wouldn't respond. He inhaled slowly through his nostrils to keep his calm, but he realized that there was no way out. Suddenly, a clear sound filled the space. Rashid dropped under the instrument panel, searching for protection, while Ethan gazed up with wide eyes. The sound was repeated by others, copying the same tone, joining together and forming a richer, stronger sound. Lifting his head slowly, Rashid raised his sight just over the instrument panel. Now he could witness what they were doing. The elephants' trunks were aimed toward the heavens, blowing air out and creating a harmony of horn-like sounds. The sound was remarkable, like being in the middle of a symphony's brass section. These weren't sounds of aggression. Ethan and Rashid were being thanked. Even Thabo joined in, though barely making a sound. Ethan burst out laughing, nudging Rashid as the tension broke. Rashid grinned too, his fear melting away. Together they watched the elephants move in perfect harmony, sending a rare message to their human friends. If Rashid needed more proof this was his path, here it was. They sat there for over 10 minutes as the elephants circled the truck, inspecting and gently touching them with their trunks. As the elephants walked into the sunset, the engine started. Ethan adjusted his hat, and they drove back onto the dirt trail. Right then, Rashid decided. This was what he wanted to do with his life. Did you enjoy this story? What would you have done if you were Ethan? Would you have risked jumping into the water to save the baby elephant, or would you have waited for help to arrive? Let us know in the comments below. If you like the story, subscribe to this channel and leave a like. Thanks so much for listening. See you in the next video.